in doing this podcast, we really want to learn like more about your role and just what piqued your interest about it and how you initially got involved. So that brings me to my first question of, for those who are unaware as to what your position is, would you mind just giving a brief description about what you do from day to day and what your role is?
No problem. Well, my title is First Team Sports Rehabilitator, which is similar to a physio. The players will come in the morning and we'll help assess, diagnose, treat injuries. We'll prepare the players for training every day, making sure they're ready and at 100% for training so they can train at their maximum every day. Working in towards games, which I'll be involved in on match day as well, preparing the players for the game, and then involved in, like, if there's any major emergencies on the pitch, I'll also be involved in that. Sometimes I'll be the guy running on the pitch, but most of the time I'm the guy speaking to the guy running on the pitch.
Awesome, thank you. And in your role, what skill set do you feel is most necessary? Because those are incredibly stressful situations at times. And how do you handle those moments to ensure you're at the top of your game every time?
I think communication's one of the biggest. I think if you're always communicating and communicating at a high level with the people that you need to speak to, I think that brings a bit of pressure off. Sometimes it can be very stressful when we've got important players injured and they're needed for important games. It becomes quite a stressful environment to be in. But it's taking one step at a time, communicating well, and just ensuring that you're doing everything you possibly can. If you can do a plan, that's my main thing. I make plans, and if I can make a plan to start with, maybe something won't go right. It's a case of just adapting your plan, and that makes it a bit less stressful, even though the stress doesn't totally go. That helps a lot.
Perfect, thank you. And you've arrived where you are, and you appear to be doing quite well, as you mentioned, making plans to ensure you're always, prepared and aware of what can happen. But what was it that piqued your interest and got you interested in exploring this field initially?
Well, when everyone's younger, especially in the UK, they always want to play football. And I was no different. When I was younger, I was running around the pitch and scoring goals and celebrating like my favourite footballers. And you always want to be that footballer, but I was never good enough. So I had a season ticket with Blackburn Rovers, and they were doing very well at the time. And it was always an interest of mine to know what they did behind the scenes. I got a few injuries while I was playing football, and that got me interested in the physio side. So, because initially I wanted to be a journalist, and I used to write up match reports and things just for myself. And then I got injured a few times, and that really piqued my interest of how I can make myself better. And then from there, it just escalated into college and university and work experience, and everything just went quite well. So working hard really worked.
Awesome. And I think it's important that you mention, for a lot of people, injuries can serve as setbacks, whereas for you, I think you adapted and you saw that as an opportunity to explore something greater, something that you could use that experience with. And
yeah, I agree.
yeah, no, totally. That's an important trait to have. And are you still learning? Like, that's a moment, I think, where you understood a new lesson and you learned something. And do you find yourself, as you work day by day, still learning on the job? Are there still always opportunities to kind of figure out something new?
Yeah, in this field, especially, I think it'll be the same in lots of fields. But in this field, there's research coming out every day. There's different things that you can adapt into your practice. We've been lucky that we had a new manager come in probably 3.5, 4 years ago, from Portugal, and from there 2 new physios have come in who are Portuguese, and the fitness coaches have come in from Portugal, and they've got so many new ideas. and every time you meet someone new, they have a new idea which you can adapt into your practice and add it to your toolbox, so to speak. Which the whole way through from university until now, I think I've been putting my toolbox together from people I've met, and I think that's been an important part. Meeting new people, learning new things, and everything changes. As we know with the COVID, everything changes every day. So it's the same in medicine.
Perfect. And what you mentioned there toward the end is that with the pandemic situation, I mean, the casual viewer can see that sports have changed drastically. No fans, that's something people can see, but behind the scenes, that isn't always mentioned. And in your role, have there been certain changes you've had to make as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think our practice has changed a lot. We've made it a new norm that we are always wearing PPE, high level PPE when we're treating players. If we're like skin to skin contact, we have to wear gloves, and just practices having so many people in the room, and treating for a certain amount of time with less than 15 minutes. All them little things that we have to think about, but it's also making sure that we're the example. So people will look at us and think, right, we need to think about what we're doing here, because if we're always wearing masks and we're setting the example, it'll make people think twice, or make it in the back of their minds that they have to be careful when they leave work as well. So I think everything's changing. I think it's behaviours more than anything, and I think because we've had it for quite a while now, I think we've come to terms with the new norm. So we're used to it now. So it's just a case of carrying it on and making sure the other people in the club don't forget, or they don't stop thinking it's as serious as it is.
Right, absolutely. And it's an unfortunate situation, but based on what you've mentioned, I guess we're all doing everything we can right now. And shifting gears to a slightly more positive moment, I guess, is throughout your career, you've worked with different clubs. You've worked with Wolves, and I believe you've worked in Australia as well. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Going around with all these different experiences to different leagues and different cultures, do you feel that's enriched your understanding of the game? Like, do you gain new understandings of your role when you go to different places and work with different clubs?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was at university, I had the eagerness to go and work at different places, like working voluntary and gaining experience through that, which just I think has helped me all the way through, getting new roles and things like that. But my aim was always to gain experiences from different people. So it looks like I've been at quite a few clubs earlier on, but that was basically to learn from old physios, new physios, people who've graduated many years ago against people that have just graduated, just to learn the difference of what they do differently, and how I can adapt the way I work to suit the best for the players and make sure I'm the best I can be. But environment wise, I think it's helped because working in part-time football, working on my own, then working as part of a medical team in a different country in Australia, it's different environments. They train at different times. They have different things to think about. They think about the weather, which in England you don't really have to. But yeah, it's lots of different factors which you have to think about in different countries, which have helped in my experience, which I use on a day-to-day basis.
Perfect. And I wondered now. First off, how did you not necessarily discover this role, but what was your first role, and how did you enter this position? And then from there, did you ever imagine yourself working with a Premier League club?
To be honest, when I was starting at university, it came out of the blue. A friend of the family was a big fan at a part-time club, and he was looking. Their physio was looking for someone to help him out and just be there to take up some of the work. So luckily, I got that call and just asked if I was interested, and from there, I've not. It's gone well. It started through a friend of the family, like I say. And then from there, it's just been a steady rise. Because I was at Stalybridge Celtic, who are a part-time team in Manchester, just moving through the leagues, and I went to Australia after working a bit with Huddersfield, and just through total luck with Perth Glory as well. We got talking to people from Northern England, which was a total fluke, and she worked at Perth Glory and she got me in there. So it's very, very lucky. But then I came back from Australia, started back in part-time football, and after a few years of that, the job came up to work in an academy at Fleetwood Town, which is a full-time team in 3 leagues below the Premier League,
Yep.
2 leagues below. And then a job came up with the first team at Wolves. Back in the day, it was just a case of trying to get a full-time job, and a full-time job doing this would be perfect. I'd never even thought about working in the Premier League. I didn't think it was a dream that was realistic. So it was just a case of my dream was to work full-time in football or work full-time in sport, whether that be football, rugby, hockey, whatever. But I never thought it was a realistic dream to work in the Premier League, and it just shows that working hard and doing everything you can to be successful helps.
Yes, well, I'm really glad that it's worked out for you, because whether you planned it or not, I bet it has to feel rather cool to say you work with a Premier League club.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's when I joined Wolves, they were towards the bottom of the Championship. Management changes and things like that have made the club go upwards. And last season we even played in the Europa League, which was an unbelievable experience. But to go from playing against part-time players, and then these days we're going to grounds and playing against household names and people that you never expect to come up against. Like last week, it was Jamie Vardy and
Yep.
like things like that. It's unbelievable.
That's incredible. And something I've always wondered, just because similarly to you, and you mentioned it earlier, I've always kind of been curious as to what it's like behind the scenes. And for you, has there been anything that surprised you now that you're with the club? Is there anything that caught you off guard that you didn't expect or weren't aware of?
The thing that surprised me the most is how down to earth and humble the players are. Because from outwards looking in, you'd think, oh, they're stuck up, or they love themselves, or they've got so much money they're not even going to talk to people normally, or things like that. But from working with them day in day out, they're just normal people. They're humble, they're down to earth. They'll have a joke with you. They'll get to know you, and I think that's the big thing that it surprised me in a way. But I've been really, really happy with, because it's easy to go into a club thinking that such a body is stuck up and very arrogant, but then once you meet him and get to know him, it's the total opposite. So I think the way the media portrays people and the way they actually are can be totally different at times.
That's a pleasant surprise, and I'm really glad to hear that, as a matter of fact. And that's just a good thing to hear, that someone, as you mentioned, from the outside looking in, wouldn't be able to understand, because I know here they're not interacting with them on a daily basis, which is a unique opportunity, and I think that's really great. So working with a Premier League club is, something awesome. And for you, do you have an experience or some story that sticks out to you as one of the most exciting or interesting moments from your career, whether it be Wolves making the run in the Europa League or something like that?
Well, from a personal point of view, I think the highlight of my career so far will be when we played in the Europa League last year. We travelled to Germany because of the COVID, and we had the tournament in Germany. And the usual guy that runs on the pitch, his missus was expecting, so she was due to give birth, so he couldn't travel with us. So that left it with me to run on the pitch. And having not done that for Wolves first team or done that at a level like this before, it was a massive honour. And
Wow.
I got to run on in the quarterfinal of the Europa League, which was unbelievable. And luckily, it all went well, and I didn't do anything wrong.
Good. That's incredible, though. I can't imagine what it must have been like, honestly. You
To
know,
be fair, the few days before that, it was very, very nerve wracking, and it was in my mind all the time. And even just before the game started, I was nervous because I didn't want, like I say, I don't want to do anything wrong. But once you sat there waiting for something to happen, it's all autonomous, and you just do what you do. And I'm quite lucky that I've worked well with all these people for so long that it was just quite automatic what happened.
that's great. That's just an incredible experience, and I'm glad you shared that because that's something that people don't often think about or see. So that's to be fair, that's really cool. That's what's going through my head. So yeah, those are high pressure situations as well. So how did you manage your emotions at the time? Was it focusing on the job? Did you think of something else to distract you? What's your method of kind of compromising stress to make sure you're able to perform how you need to and, like you said, not mess anything up?
I think it was all in my head at the start. So the couple of days before, or the morning of the game, or the afternoon of the game, it was obviously thinking a lot and a lot of things going on in my head. But once you get there, I've got enough training, I've got enough skills and techniques that I'm not really that worried. Really, once if something happened, then I'm not worried that I wouldn't do a good job. And I think once I sat on the bench and the game started, it was a case of just turning it on and making sure I was concentrating. Then the nerves go away. As soon as I sat on the bench, the nerves went, and I just got on to doing my job.
Very good. Now, shifting our focus to the season we have at the moment, from a personal standpoint and for the Wolves team as a whole, what's your aspiration for the season? What do you want to achieve?
From a medical point of view, we want to get a good record. We've had a good record last few seasons, whether that be through luck or working hard. It could be anything, but from a medical point of view, we want a good record and we want all our players fit to be able to play in every game. But from a club point of view, I think we just want to do as best as they can. I think we got very close to European football again this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got higher this year. If maybe Europa League, Champions League, it's not too far away as long as we're consistent. So I think from a club point of view, they want to play in Europe again, which was an unbelievable year last year and an experience that everyone thrived under. So hopefully, similar towards the end of this year, next year, we can get back into European football, I think.
That's good to know. And like you mentioned, Europe is a goal that the club wants to achieve. And do you feel that it's difficult at times? Like, professionals are a completely different level. They're incredible. Do you think the team culture as a whole handles their emotions well? Like, because I know fans sometimes they'll see their club performing and they'll think, we're that close to Europe. Let's get excited, and maybe the fan base gets a bit complacent. Do you feel like the players handle their emotions well to that level where, regardless of how they're performing, it's always going to be their strongest effort?
Yeah, well, something that the manager brought in when he came in was a case that we all worked towards the next game. So from then, we've always, right, the next game is Southampton on Monday night. We're not thinking past that, because if we do, then we'll slip up against Southampton. So we've always gone a game at a time, and that's not just the manager. It started with just the manager, but then everyone's part of that method now. So I think even us personally, we just look at the next game and we'll concentrate on the game after that once we've got through this game. So I think that's partly because that's a reason why we've done so well, is by just take it one game at a time, one step at a time, and from there we can see where we are at the end.
Awesome. I'm very glad to hear that. Now, I think I've received all the answers to my questions. To be fair, you've been incredible in answering, giving me detailed answers, everything I'm looking for. Is there anything that you feel like you want to share? Now's the time if you want to say anything, share a story, or just mention anything else regarding your role that you feel hasn't been said yet.
No, I think we've got through most of it. No, I think it's been a great journey throughout from non-league. I think it's just mainly anyone that's in my situation would be from the beginning. Just make sure they're giving them advice to make sure they're taking as many experiences from it as they can. As if they get a chance to do something, even if they're not getting paid for it, experience comes before the piece of paper in front of you sometimes. So I think just making sure anyone that's coming through university, make sure they get as much experience in as many different sports really as possible. That'll help them become more successful or give them the edge over other people. But from my point of view, I think we've been through everything that I can think of.
Well done. Well, thank you. That's tremendous advice, and I'm sure that would be well appreciated from anyone who heard it. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. I immensely appreciate everything you've given me. And on a personal standpoint, I've learned a ton about a role that I've always wanted to know a little bit more about. So thank you for that. And it's been a very enjoyable chat this morning. Or here it's this morning, but for you it's over there.
Yeah, afternoon. But yeah, it's great, and I think this role it's quite new. So from that point of view, I think it'll become more and more popular. And I think it's similar to an athletic trainer in America. I've got our old head physio is at LA Galaxy at the moment. So from speaking to him, I think an athletic trainer is the closest thing I can get to in America, which is a similar role. But yeah, it's a relatively new role, and it'll start becoming more frequent, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Danny. It's much appreciated. Best of luck on the rest of the season. I'm really hoping Wolves make it up to Europe again, whether it's Champions League or Europa League. Wish you all the best in the season, and stay safe as well.
Thank you. You too. I hope you stay safe, and hope this COVID disappears at some point.
As do I. I'd love to get to a match.